Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to check out some brand new music from Alon Mor. This is pretty interesting. We've checked out some of his stuff before, and it is, if I remember correctly, a bit esoteric. This is a track called Within Will. It is, as far as I can tell, exclusively on SoundCloud, so, as usual, we got the janky time bar up there. It's probably a little small for mobile users. I apologize. Not much I could do about it. I tried my best. Uh, I tried my best. I tried a lot. I tried a lot of ways to spruce it up and make it bigger. Anyways, let's get into this, see what's going on with Alon Mor. Really interesting juxtaposition right here. Between these massively layered stingers and that isolated melody line at the beginning. I love the fade in on the stinger. This is just a treat for the ears. There's a lot of nuance in here. Plenty of dynamics. And it's just so cleanly produced. For some reason, I just thought of the Death Clock track, Murder Train a Comin'. The ominous and largeness of this. It sounds like a train. But it's so dark and brooding, like a murder train. I'm still trying to figure out if it's microtonal or just dissonant within 12 tone. So good. So massive.
FX22, take 3, sandbags off top of wall.
Yeah, there's so many really intricate rhythms, just even when we had two instruments. Okay, I see where he's taking this. I don't see where he's taking it. That's... intricacies like Clockwork, but with organic evolution. Always pushes it further than I think he can. I don't know what time signature that was. 9/8 would be my guess, but I think it cut off just a hair bit sooner than that. 17/16 maybe? Every time I'm like two repetitions early because I think we've hit the peak and he just finds a higher peak to go to. It's always louder than I think it can be. It's fascinating from that angle.
FX22, take 3, sandbags off top of wall.
I wonder where all these samples come from. I think that's the third one, all with the same voice. Yeah. I'm in disbelief. I can't stop shaking my head. No, I just all right, SoundCloud. I did not tell you you could make a cue. That's why I like YouTube. When the video's over on YouTube, it just ends. There's no autoplay. How do I turn off autoplay? Why does everything have to have an autoplay? All right. I can't really talk about the ending until I've talked about everything else, but I want to talk about the ending so bad. So we're gonna just deal with it, all right? We're gonna talk about the ending. If you don't get what I'm talking about, we'll get around to it eventually. We're gonna memento this and start at the end and work our way backwards. The ending was everything. Not just like the modern colloquial usage of just like it was all that I wanted, but it was literally all that the song was. You see, the song is kind of split up into three distinct modes, and the ending was all three styles at the same time. And I'm trying to figure out if this is what within will means. I'm taking that very directly, very surface level. This is what it feels like to be inside the mind of will. Now, I think it is a sort of play on words there. There is a lot of forcefulness and directness in this track that could be the idea of capturing the idea of willpower, of the drive and momentum and to do something, right? But it could also be the mindset of a person named Will. Yeah, the second one seems weak. I like the first one better. We're going to stick with that. To capture what it means to have willpower, to artistically represent the concept of will. Yeah, that's the angle we're going to go on this. And so by the end of the track, it is just drive and momentum and power. It is being very direct and doing something. It is just a phenomenally overpowering, powering, powering. Why is that hard to say? Section of the song. It amps me up. Like it even gives me the feeling of having willpower. I can do anything right now, having just listened to this. It is phenomenal. And the ending reaches those heights because we've got to hear several ideas representing this throughout the track, and then we heard them all simultaneously there at the end. And I honestly have no idea how everything fit in there. It was phenomenal. Uh, yeah, just wild stuff. So I miscalculated. I don't want to work backwards from there. We'll talk about theme later. We're going to talk about how this was created. I have a real quick question. Is Alon Mor an electronic artist or a classical composer? I don't know because they don't have a Wikipedia page. That makes things really difficult. Oh, it doesn't really say. I thought they were an electronic artist. And it's quite possible that everything in here is digital or virtual instruments. But there is such a warmth to the performance of them, and I don't think I really heard anything that was obviously electronic. Everything has an acoustic equivalent to it. Actually, I take that back. There was one sound near the beginning that I think was a bit more electronic, but I mean, even then, it was borderline. A lot of the stuff, this entire track really feels like it could be played by an orchestra if Alon wanted to, if the orchestra wanted to, transpose it out, hand it out to everybody and play it, you know? And that speaks to me in a way that electronic music doesn't always. And I think it's interesting. We got to talk about electronic music this week with Violet Pony. Is that who it was? Yes, Violet Pony. And one of the things that I brought up was the sheer width of options that an electronic artist has available to them as far as timbre goes. It's near infinite, the different types of sounds you can include in your music, and you can always go and make your own, chaining and linking together all sorts of effects and synthesizers, and really making the sound that you want. And so that usually it impresses me. There's a jaw drop, and I think I called it musical candy the other day when we checked out Violet Pony, because it's like a kid in a candy store. He's just constantly new sounds, right? And I like that, but it can also be overwhelming. And it has overwhelmed me in the past. It's definitely a double-edged sword, something to be very mindful of if you're making electronic music. But here, assuming this is electronic music, everything feels very familiar to me. It feels very rooted in an orchestra, and thus it appeals to my ears a bit more than electronic music typically does. And I guess it brings up a question: is electronic music the process of music creation or the timbre of the music? Usually, when I think of electronic music, I think of synthesizers, but if you use a keyboard to program out this orchestral stuff, is it still electronic music? I don't know. Everything in here, though, sounds very grounded, very rooted. There's a lot of warmth to everything. And there's a human quality to a lot of it as well. Not human, organic quality, I think, is the angle I want to go on that. And I think a lot of it comes down to not just the timbre of the instruments, but the composition. All of these instruments are played with nuance in so many different variables. One big one that I think we can easily talk about is volume. There are crescendos all throughout this track. There's decrescendos. There's sforzandos in here, hitting a note, backing off the volume to something really low, and swelling back into that same volume you were at, sometimes even exceeding it. Those are very fun to play. Um, yeah, just a lot of playing around with volume, not even just on the larger sense, as I mentioned. We had a lot of crescendos in here, just gradually growing the sound of a full idea. But if you even listen to individual lines in this track, um, especially the guitar, you listen to that Spanish guitar that we got at the beginning and towards the end when we revisited that section, you'll find a lot of nuance in it. Each individual string kind of has its own inflection to it. There's all sorts of shifting of weight, of volume of each strum. If it is programmed, it is meticulous. It is ridiculously meticulous. I can't imagine how long it took to program that in. Something like that, it makes a lot more sense to me to maybe program everything else and be like, I need a guitarist to come in here and lay down some guitar lines. But maybe not to Alon. Maybe he's like, I need to program this. I need full control over everything that happens here, and it couldn't have been a quick process by any means. It's just everything feels like it was touched. Just little variables manipulated, impact, intonation, articulation, volume. Everything feels like it's just so precisely controlled, and what it creates is a rather dynamic performance. And it just sounds so lovely, but also organic. All of this feels like it was performed, and that's where it like blurs the line for me. Even when we check out um some of the stinger sections, right? And we get those bump, yeah, bump, 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 and we get these like really harsh, aggressive attacks. Even the fade ins into them, the ways that they trail out, it all feels. In fact, the trail outs feel very much like being in a performance hall. The natural acoustics of that, and the way that large notes specifically die off in those environments. I have no idea how all of this was achieved if it's done electronic. And that's sort of where I'm at with that. Um, because I was just under the impression he's an electronic artist, but this is just years of fine tuning of every little instrument. And some of these sections are layered. We're talking like 18 instruments, 20 instruments going off at any one time. And just so many ideas and hand tweaking variables on all of them on a per note basis. As sad as I would be for someone to tell me, actually, this was all played live, and just kind of eradicate the last like 5 minutes of conversation here as not even really about what happened, it would make so much more sense to me, and it would make Alon seem just a little less crazy. I can't imagine putting all that work and attention into each individual thing here when you could just get some people to play it live. Um, but that's me. I'm a very old school composer. I would much rather write stuff on sheet music and have someone play it than for me to try to make it in software, and it never quite ends up right. I'm not a producer either, so I mean that doesn't help. It just seems so much easier. Um, Compositionally, I thought this was interesting. Aside from all the dynamics, also we can put that in the last section too, is just with dynamics. Let's talk about this for a second. Yeah, dynamics, right? We talked about volume, but let's talk about some other stuff. The opening section was really neat. We had that dancing eighth note idea. I don't remember what instrument it was on. And we got like 2 bars of it just kind of fluttering about, really light, isolated. I think there was a little percussion pattern going on alongside it. And then we would get like 2 bars of this super layered, and oh, we got to talk about layers real quick too. These super layered stingers. What I was just talking about, those really big punchy moments. And then it would dip back down. It's just this little dancing, I don't know, vibraphone or something. And then bop, ba, da, bop, 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 bop. Dun, 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 dun. Like just the back and forth of it, it just sounds so cool. It is going from the utmost floor of the track, although not technically. We did reach a lower floor later in the song it actually sounded like it ended. I think there was silence for a while at one point, like 10 minutes in, to the peaks and just bouncing back and forth. Um, but it's not just the volume of it, it's the width. We have one instrument by itself with some light percussion to this stack of instruments all coming in at the same time. We have, again, it kind of sounds like a vibraphone to me. It's very light, very small notes with a little bit of tail versus these massive sounds with a massive tail off. It's just a huge reverb coming off of them. Um, it is so much about the contrast of these two sounds, and we hear this throughout the entire track. Um, if you were watching the volume guy over there and the visualizer down there, you would see so much diversity between the bass to the treble range. The volumes just jumping all around, and you can feel the width of all of this and the lack of width to it as well, the thinness of some of these sections. The entire song, at least to me, is based around these dynamic juxtapositions. So many moments of this song work because he is quite playful with looking at these different variables, these different aspects of the performance, and saying, well, what's the opposite of it? How can we explore that compositionally? How can we include that in the melody? How can we build a story off of jumping between two extremes? And so most of this song ends up doing that. And it comes off as something exceptionally dynamic and contrasty. Um, it is, for the most part, kind of hyper repetitive. I really, I'm not sure where I lean on this yet. There are certainly parts in here, and a majority of them, I found myself engaged with the track constantly. But if I ever took more of a bird's eye view to it, I'm like, okay, we've sort of been doing the same thing for 5 minutes here. I wonder if we're going to move on from this. but it's the minutia, it's the nitty-gritty, it's the small things in there where you can find so much nuance. And so depending on how far down you want to dig, I think is going to change how bored or engaged you are with it, unless you just really enjoy the atmosphere and stay on that surface level and melt into the song. That's perfectly fine as well. Um, Theme and composition. Let's get back to this. My brain is so scattered on this one. I don't know what to talk about first. I don't know what order to do things on. Just jumping all around. The song is composed in an interesting way because it follows a few different styles. Our opening 5 minutes I kind of likened to a murder train. Very ominous, very overbearing, a little eerie as far as the atmosphere goes. These massive chugs throughout the song, rhythmic chugs based on these lower instrument accents. Um, we even had a person come over an intercom and say something about boarding on something or another. And that didn't help with me not thinking about a train metaphor here. We also had the whistling. No, it was like a bell. That's what it was. Um, and yeah, so we have like 5 minutes of this, and then the next section looked towards more of a Spanish guitar influence, which is, I've already talked about this whole guitar thing earlier. But it has all of the characteristics of a an acoustic guitar with just really heavy strings on it, played with really heavy intonation. Even sounds like to my ears using the nails rather than a pick. Has a very different timbre to it. Um, and just these really big, finger sweeps and just hitting these strings really hard. Um, it is a bit of an aggressive style, fitting in with the ideas of willpower. It's not really about being timid, it's about getting things done. And so we have that whole section with the layering that it goes into, and then we kind of bring back the beginning. Oh, I'm missing a section. What am I missing? I wish I could remember. It was the third section, and we introduced it for a short amount of time before bringing in the Spanish guitar section, before bringing in the train section, and layering all of these parts up together. Um, but yeah, and then that takes us to the end, and it's very interesting though, because after we get done with the train section, that eeriness never really comes back. There is still there's still an aggression to the track after it, but we lose the fear, the anxiety. Um, Oh, we still gotta talk about the tonality. Okay, anyways, I don't quite know how to reconcile all of these different sections, but they do come together rather well at the end to paint the picture of this massive, unstoppable force that's larger than life, and it just reaches these volume peaks that I can't even grasp. They're just so loud. This is something you need to listen to with probably a good pair of speakers at a decent volume. Something not damaging to your ears, but not quiet either. It's something you need to feel, I think. Even with my headphones, I still caught a strong grasp of the width, the power, the size of it all, but I didn't feel it. I didn't feel it in my heart, right? I want my bones to rumble when I listen to this. Um, and I think you need a good pair of speakers for that. Tonality. I feel like the more I talk, the more I'm going to find things to talk about. Eventually, I'm going to have to reach a point where I say, I can't cover everything. I just need to wrap this up. Anyways, tonality. I'm still not sure what we're looking at here. There's some sections that feel very well placed within the typical 12-tone Western idea of notes. When you look at a keyboard, a piano, and you see the 12 keys, that's breaking up an octave into 12 equal sets. We had a little crash course on this when we checked out the Zaya Ero's microtonal track, which she did in like 34 Edo. It's been a while since we did that one. I don't remember the specifics about the track, but anyways, an octave is pretty easy to break up. It's all wavelengths. There's science behind it. We can find a note and find the note exactly one octave above it. Everything in between is a bit more subjective. You can break it up perfectly into as many notes as you want, and that's more of a scientific angle to it, but your intervals aren't going to be perfect because of physics. So parts of this, though, feel like they're in 12 tone division. 12 tone intonation, which is the 12 notes that we're used to hearing in like 99% of the music that you and I probably listen to. But you can break it up into as many as you want. You can break it up into just 7. You can break it up into 30. You know, as much as you want to divide the octave up, and that's going to give you all your notes, and that's where microtonality comes in. And some of these sections do feel microtonal to me. I'm not entirely sure if they are though, because they're usually contrasted against and sometimes played entirely with sections that are in 12 tone. And so my other decision would be, or my other guess would be that it's just an intonation thing. Some notes are played sharper or flatter, or maybe they're played from outside a scale to create some dissonance that way. But sometimes the dissonance sounds harmonic, and that to me is typically a direction towards microtonality. And so I'm curious if Alon has done any interviews. Well, actually, I couldn't find any interviews, so I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Um, but I'm curious if he utilizes, or on this track, or even just in general, microtonality in his music, and if there was any in here. And it's strange. Like this is the second topic that I've brought up where I'm like, it certainly sounds one way, but not all of the time. I mean, the other one is timbre. This doesn't sound electronic most of the time. There's a human quality to all of it, but it also kind of sounds digital too. I don't know. Yeah. I'm certainly walking away from this one with more questions than answers. If you came to this video hoping I explained this track to you, uh, sorry. Do you want a refund of your time? I'm not a time master, but maybe I can find someone who can do that for you. Because I'm in the same boat as most of y'all. It sounds awesome. I don't know what's going on with it though. There's Oh, there are no lyrics to this track, so we don't need to do a lyrical dive. Is there anything I want to bring up before I wrap this up then? There was a phrase I used. Oh, in the section I forgot what it was. Yeah, the Clockwork section. A lot of little ideas. Almost like percussive melodic instruments such as xylophones and uh, marimbas, glockenspiels, everything sort of in that area where you hit something in order to create a tone, but the different things you can hit are all pitched to different notes. Just a lot of this. And it was like sparkling and just quietly moving, and there's so many layers, and I called it intricate clockwork. So, oh, it was the rhythmic section too. Yeah, where there were like 5 or 6 different rhythms going on, all of them slightly out of sync with each other, creating some really interesting polyrhythms, but they all sync up too after like 4 bars or so. Um, They were all in sync, but doing their own things, seemingly out of sync. And when you mix in the melodic twinkling in there as well, it's just this. It's a flurry of little moving pieces that all come together to create something beautiful. And so, that's the intricate clockwork aspect. But I said it's intricate clockwork organically evolving. And there is a strong element to this section that as as much as all of these sections were doing their own little things, all of them interlinking with everyone else, doing their isolated ideas, but coming together for something greater, like a clock, every idea was also changing. It wasn't a concept that we saw over and over and over and over the same exact thing. The rhythmic ideas would change, the layering of the rhythmic ideas would change, which of the percussive instruments were playing with one another. Some of them would turn off, some of them would turn on, some of them would change their rhythm entirely. The melodic aspects would change their key. They would change the melody itself. They might not always change the rhythm, but they changed what they were doing. There was also dynamics to it. When you think of clockwork, it's click, 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 click. It's all static, right? But this had dynamic qualities to it. It had an organic touch to the length of some of the notes, the way that they tapered off, the way that they attacked, the volume that they were at, all the dynamic qualities we've been talking about. And it's very interesting because I don't really have a good metaphor for this, but just imagine a clock that can change its shape or even change the way it tells time to fit different, I don't know, planes of existence. Like I said, it gets a bit rough here, but we typically think of the static mechanical nature of clocks. They don't change. It's a lot of tiny things that do one thing over and over and over and over, and together they create the intricacies of a watch or a clock. But like imagine that it could evolve and change and alter what it does. It makes no sense. They seem to be going in opposite directions, but a lot of this song also feels like it's multiple things working in opposite directions, but instead of subtracting from those around it, it all sort of adds up into something ridiculously gorgeous. I I don't know that I have answers for anyone here. Maybe you walk away from this and you're like, this dude has no idea what he's talking about. You're not wrong. I really hope I didn't waste anyone's time, but I am looking forward to some really interesting conversation in the comments because those are just my thoughts on Alon Mor's Within Will. What did you think? Give me your hypotheses, opinions, perspectives, everything else down in the comment section. Let me know your whole take on this. Do you agree with some of the stuff I said? You have something totally different in mind. Let me know. Also, the idea of clockwork and trains, they're very similar concepts. Huh. Also, you can't stop time. Time has an impenetrable willpower. Trains are also just really massive and you can't stop them really. I mean, you can, but not like you can. Oh, you're not Superman. The train is quite immovable if a person is the barrier. I don't know. The more I think about it, the more there's like things I want to talk about, but I don't know if any of it is actually going to be fruitful conversation. So I am going to end it here. It's mostly just like little observations I have at this point. Let me know your thoughts. Above the comment section in the description box is a link for Linktree. Takes you to this menu. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. We do have one more today. It is also new music. If you're interested, we just checked out Unexpect last weekend. We checked out their whole album, Fables of a Sleepless Empire. What we're looking at after this video is a new project from the bassist of that band. And yes, it seems like he still has his 9-string bass, so definitely something worth checking out if you enjoy bass-oriented music. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.